In today's second segment, we're sitting down with Aimee Dickenson, owner of RevIVe Hydration Roanoke, an incredibly interesting new business that I can't wait to hear more about. Hi, Aimee. Thanks so much for coming on our show today.
Hi, thank you.
Great. First of all, congratulations, because you just recently launched this business, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, like just a few weeks ago. So tell me about yourself and this very fancy sounding new business we get to look forward to.
Well, I am Aimee, and I am not originally from Roanoke. I am from Northern Virginia, but I moved down here about 15 years ago, and I just fell in love with the region.
Who doesn't? I mean,
I know. And we have horses, and so we would go up in the mountains. And after my divorce, my parents begged me to move back up to Northern Virginia. I'm like, there is no way. So I just couldn't leave the mountains. So
I understand that feeling.
now I'm a Roanoker.
Awesome. And so tell me about this mobile IV hydration business, because I had never heard of this up until very, very recently.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people haven't. And like I said, I'm from Northern Virginia, and they are everywhere in Northern Virginia on almost every street corner. There's brick and mortars.
Okay.
They have them in LA, Miami, Las Vegas is a big one.
It felt very, very California to me when I read it.
Yes. In fact, when I told somebody about it recently, they said, "Oh my gosh, you're bringing California to Roanoke." And I thought that was so funny. But yeah, so I needed an IV about a year ago. I was taking what I called my COVID cocktail every night before I went to bed. And it was just oral supplements that I had done some research on that I knew would boost my immunity, protect my respiratory tract, and hopefully prevent me getting COVID. But I still got it. And
Really?
it knocked me on my butt. And I just didn't get it for a week or two. It seemed to ebb and flow. So I don't know if it was technically long COVID, but for a week or two, I would be feeling great. And then it was just like all my energy was zapped. And I thought, I need something more than what I'm taking orally. So I looked up some just on a quick Google search, IV hydration in my area. And there were one or two, but I just didn't love the fact that a lot of them, they don't come to your house. And I was so sick, I could not get out of bed.
It's an interesting point that you found the need for that way.
Yes, unfortunately.
Right.
But I was in nursing school at the time, and my boyfriend, one of his master's degrees is an MBA, so he's a businessman. And his other one is big data analytics, so he loves IT. And so I was talking to him, and in fact, we were on our way down to Florida for vacation, and I said, "What do you think about this idea?" And he's like, "Aimee, do it. You found a need in Roanoke." So that's how it came about. I've been planning this for about a year. I've been taking classes. I've been doing research. I've talked to physicians. I've talked to nurse practitioners, just trying to figure out the best approach to do it safely, but effectively. And it's 100% mobile.
And let's talk about your background here, because you yourself just got your nursing degree. And so you're not like walking off the street thinking we should do this. You have the full experience and knowledge behind you to be able to put this in. So what happens when you come to my house? Like, what does this entail before we really get into, like what sets you apart? Like the mobile part is amazing, but what are we doing when you come to my house and we sit down and I pick something off your menu?
Well, I'm not going to come to your house immediately. You're going to go onto my website and you're going to fill out intake forms because every single person must have a good faith exam by one of my nurse practitioners. So you fill out the form online. It's very intuitive. It's DocuSign, so you can sign it. It's legal. And it goes immediately to one of my nurse practitioners. And then she will call you and do a 10-minute, 15-minute good faith exam to make sure you are healthy enough to get an IV.
Great.
And then from that point, she will send me a green light and say, okay, you're green lighted. So go ahead and call her. And I call and we talk about what's going on with your body. Are you exhausted? Do you have inflammation from an autoimmune disease? are you hungover?
Yeah.
Or
are you PMSing? I mean, that was another one I noticed.
Yep, yeah. I have a PMS drip. I really have a drip for everything under the stars. So that's why I don't do online booking, because I want it to be individualized. I want to be able to talk with you and figure out which drip is going to be the best for you.
Have you ever run into where a prospective patient believes that they need one thing, and then you hear them and you're like, actually, this one would be much more effective?
Absolutely.
Okay. So don't take it on your own. You got to call the professionals.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me about what sets RevIVe Hydration apart from other businesses. And I mean, I know it's the first one in Roanoke, because it's again, very fascinating to me that I hadn't even heard of it until very recently. So yeah, what sets your business apart?
Well, there are other IV hydration businesses here in Roanoke, and they do it well. What sets us apart is we're 100% mobile. We don't have a brick and mortar. Now, I have an office where I have my inventory, where my nurses go and mix bags. We don't typically mix bags at the home. But what really sets us apart is just the fact that you can't just book your own IV online. A lot of these other places you can. And I don't know their process, but I'm sure there is, that consultation aspect where they kind of get to know, the client and understand what exactly they need. But we really take a personal approach to this. Like, I take nursing so seriously. You
have a very big responsibility.
Yes.
So thank you.
And my nurse practitioners, oh my goodness, they are hardcore with staying compliant. Safety is always number one. And one of the things that I always do is right after the drip, or maybe a day after, I always do a follow-up, because it's personal to me. I want to make sure that they're feeling better. Do you have any adverse reactions? 10 out of 10, they are always feeling better.
Man,
so
it's a good stat. I like that one. Your boyfriend would probably like that data stat too.
He loves data. Yeah.
So I have to admit, I love that part where you're coming to my house. I as somebody who is a homebody and loves to not leave her house when I don't have to. I think that's a really, really neat point. But besides going to someone else's house, where else do you provide IVs?
Well, just 2 weeks ago, we went to a client's office. She is a therapist, and she really needed a drip. So within an hour of her calling, we were there.
I think that's really interesting that you can go on site. Say you get stuck somewhere and you really just can't get out of it for whatever, you get a big day or whatever.
Well, yeah, and she had clients booked, just like I do.
Right.
And so she said, I have a time slot between 1 and 2. Can you be here then? I'm like, absolutely.
And it takes an hour, right?
Typically, we got her done in 45 minutes, and that's vital signs, and that's the full drip, vital signs again, and then answering any questions. We also really want to focus on people that work outside, especially in the summer. So our construction workers, our welders, welders work in hot conditions 24/7.
Sure, yeah.
And roofers, any HVAC, plumbers, anything like that, because if their employers will invest in IV hydration, their workman's comp will go down tremendously. Their call outs for sickness are going to decrease tremendously. And not only that, but they're investing in their employees and letting them know your health matters, and it's going to increase job retention.
How interesting. And it's true. Like, think of how dehydrated you feel walking on a summer day, much less on a roof, working all day under the sun. So that's pretty important to take care of yourself in that regard.
Yeah. And I started thinking about that because my boyfriend's dad, he owns a roofing company in San Diego. And he was like, Aimee, my dad's business could utilize something like this. And then when I was talking to my nurses, because I've hired nurses from the ED, labor and delivery, endoscopy, and ICU, and they can put in IVs upside down in a ditch. And but the ones that I spoke to from the ED, they said, we get guys coming in and women coming in that are working on road crews, the railroad, roofers, construction workers, and they come in and sit for 3 to 4 hours just to get normal saline. And then they get billed $500 to $1,000 after the fact because their insurance didn't cover all of it. And it was just to get rehydrated.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And another point I noticed on your website, so you're talking about, reaching out to companies or investing in their employees, but you also do IV parties, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, tell me more about this, because this is something I kind of want to learn more about.
Yes, so we do IV parties, and this came about because right before I opened my nurse practitioners and another nurse that works with me, we all came over to my house, or they all came over to my house. And I said, we need to try it. If we're going to sell it, we need to try it. And I had done IV hydration, so I knew the benefits, but everybody brought something. So it took the pressure off of me. I had made an easy chicken salad, and Whitney brought the wine, Sierra brought hummus and vegetables, and Bernadette brought brownies.
This sounds awesome already.
I know. And we problem solved, we collaborated, we laughed a lot. And as I was sitting there around my patio table as we're dripping, I was like, this is awesome. This is not just nourishing my body, but it's nourishing my soul. Because I don't know if you're like me, but I don't get enough girl time.
Same. Absolutely not.
And I need it. And I feel like I'm always in the hustle. And it was just so nice to take an hour or two out of my life and just enjoy friends.
Well, and that's cool too. So for all of us who feel like we have so much to do in our lives, you're tired and you're exhausted and all that, you're not getting enough sleep, but you're multitasking at the same time as you're getting to hang out with your girlfriend. So that's really cool. I love that idea for like a bachelorette party, or just, getting together with your group of girlfriends on a Friday night and you just need something to do. What better way to feel better and get some gal pal time?
Exactly. And then I posted it on Facebook, and one of the commenters said, oh, you guys had a sip and drip.
A sip and drip.
And I'm like, I love that.
That's great.
That is awesome. So that's what I've named it.
That's awesome.
Sip and drip.
Clever. I'm good on rhymes. I love that. So you offer something called semaglutide. Go ahead and pronounce that for me, because
semaglutide.
Semaglutide. All right. How did you decide to incorporate a weight loss medication into your IV business? I'm sure you get this question quite a bit.
I do.
Yeah.
So my background is in public health. I have my master's in public health, and I was an epidemiologist for nearly 10 years with VDH. And one of the things that I saw time and time again is that obesity leads to chronic illnesses. And in nursing school, we learned obesity leads to chronic illnesses. Now, a few years ago, the number one leading cause of death in the United States was cardiovascular disease. And so once COVID hit, people started staying indoors, people started losing weight, but also more people started gaining weight because they just weren't getting out and staying active. Then the number one cause of death in the United States shifted, and it was now obesity. And we're not only seeing it in adults, but we're seeing it in children too. So obesity leads to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension. And so this new medication had come out right around that time, and it was called Wegovy or Ozempic. And it just depends on it's the same medication, but it just depends if you are diabetic or if you are not diabetic. And what it is semaglutide. And endocrinologists and PCPs were prescribing this for people that were obese, overweight, and primarily had diabetes. And what they started seeing was dramatic weight loss. But what's even better than the dramatic weight loss is that it started repairing the pancreas. And so the pancreas started making more insulin, which therefore reduces your blood sugar. Because blood sugar works like a sandpaper to your blood vessels, and that's what causes hypertension and CAD, or coronary artery disease, and MIs, or heart attacks. So diabetes is systemic. It's all throughout the body. And unfortunately, it is one of the scariest diseases to me because it can affect your eyes, it can affect your nerves, it can affect your kidneys, your heart. I mean, it affects everything. So these doctors were seeing not only what were the patients losing tremendous amounts of weight, but their pancreas was healing and their blood sugars were staying in a healthy range. So then California got a hold of it, and they pretty much sold out of it in California because all these women and celebrities were like, I want to lose weight. And that's pretty much how it got its fame, I guess. Yeah. But then I started thinking about it because throughout nursing school, I had lost weight, and then on breaks, I would gain the weight back because I wasn't under stress. And I had lost about 20 pounds with good old-fashioned diet and exercise, but I had plateaued and I could not get past the certain number, and it was still considered overweight. I also have hyperlipidemia, which is high cholesterol, and it's not because of my diet, it's genetics. My dad has it. So I went to my PCP and she goes, I want to go ahead and put you on Wegovy, which is the semaglutide. I said, great, okay, let's do it, because I had researched it. I was really excited about it. I go to my local pharmacy and my insurance didn't cover it. And I said, okay, well, how much is it if I pay out of pocket? And they're like $1,700.
Oh,
and I about
yikes.
fell out.
I think I almost did fall out.
Yeah,
Oh, my gosh.
I was like, no, that's a mortgage. No, thank you.
It's more than a mortgage. Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So it was right around that time that I was coming up with my menu and figuring out exactly what I wanted to offer. And I went to my nurse practitioners and my medical director, and we all were sitting around having dinner one night. And I said, what do you guys think about semaglutide? And every single one of them were like, yes. I mean, they did not even hesitate, because this drug is amazing.
Okay, well, I might have to be, that's the first one I want to try out. Well, no, it's interesting because, I mean, over COVID, full disclosure, like I had a basement gym, so I got to work out. I was one of the few who lost weight over the course, but then you go back, you get back into regular routines a little bit. You know, you're going out to festivals more and going out to the breweries. And so you gain the weight back, or a little bit of it back. And so it is sort of, how do I get back onto that sort of the treadmill, so to speak, of, you know, back on track. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And what's so exciting is that we are seeing the same kind of weight loss that you see with bariatric gastric bypass.
Wow, that's pretty significant then.
It's huge.
Yeah, that's not just like a pound.
Without going under the knife.
Yeah, that's very significant then.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, you mentioned your menu. I have to talk about the menu because I was looking over it and I'm cracking up at some of these titles. For example, the "Why did I text my ex IV drip?" That is hysterical. How did you come up with that? Or some of these names, gosh, what are the other ones? There is the Fountain of Youth IV drip, which is particularly enticing. The Goat, obviously, that's probably your humdinger, right? The real good one. And then you have Aunt Flo's IV drip, which, again, we kind of touched on. But how did you come up with these great names?
Well, I cannot take credit for Why Did I Text My Ex? My friend Nikki came up with that one. We were all brainstorming at work one day, and I'm like, I just don't want to have the recovery drip or the hangover drip. Like, I wanted to have fun names that reflect my personality.
It's very descriptive.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of feel like you know what you're in for there.
Right? And I wanted it to be tasteful, but still kind of funny.
Well, I think they're great. I love these. They made me laugh. And of course, the first thing I want to do is like look at the website more and figure out what it is. And then the other thing, we were talking just before we started the podcast recording, but you had what was called the VIP IV drip. And you've actually renamed this one. And I just love the story behind this because it shows such an investment in you and your business and the community. Can you tell me more about why you renamed it and what you renamed it to?
Sure. So the VIP drip is now called the Bennett. And it's named after Robert Bennett. He is one of the owners of Grand Home Furnishings. And during nursing school, I worked my way through working at Frankie Rollins in Salem. And he was one of my favorite guests that came in. And at first, when I first started there, I didn't know him from Adam. And he and his girlfriend, April, would come in. And first of all, she looks like a runway model. And he is just the nicest man. And everyone was fawning over them. And they're like, oh, who's going to take care of Bennett tonight? Who's going to take care of Bennett? And I'm like, who in the world is Bennett? And then I learned. I understood why people fought to take care of Robert Bennett and April. They are, without a doubt, the most generous, kind people. And for the last 2 years, if I'm working, I always get Bennett. I either get Bennett and his family, Bennett and his business partners. I also take care of George Cartledge, who is equally as sweet and generous. And that's his cousin who also owns Grand's. But I named it the VIP Bennett because he always treated me like I was valued, and he treated me like a friend. And he never looked down on me like I was just a server. And he became invested in who I was and my journey. And he was always asking me questions, always asking about the kids, and asking how school was going. And when it came time to we were about 3 weeks away from launching, he said, hey, Aimee, what's going on with RevIVe? Like, where are you? And I said, I am ready to pull the trigger. I'm just having a really hard time finding small office space here in Roanoke. It's so hard to find small office space. And he said, oh, I've got a solution. We are renovating some small offices in the back of the corporate office. I'll just give you one of those.
Perfect.
And I'm like, Robert, thank you. But what touched me the most was that this man who is so incredibly busy and is on the board at Carillion, and he runs a successful business. He was at his home in Florida, and I had invited him to my pinning ceremony May 12th. And I was the class speaker, and he cut his trip short so that he could be there at my pinning ceremony. And I didn't see him initially as I was going down in the processional, but when I stood up and I was giving my speech, I looked down and he was on the back row. And he was smiling and he was so proud, and he took more pictures than my parents. But I started crying because I thought, here's this man who's so important and he sees me.
I think that's so wonderful and honestly indicative of our community, just because, again, you said, I didn't even know him when we first met. And for him to now be at your pinning ceremony, taking as many pictures as your folks, like, what a wonderful friendship that you've been able to build because of our community.
He's amazing. And this is just one of the reasons why I love Roanoke and why I don't foresee myself ever leaving.
Of course not. Well, we don't want you to, but that explains the VIP. So I love that story. Okay, bonus question, the last one. And this is for you and your family or your friends and loved ones. So when you aren't busy doing the IV business, where do you and your family love to go, play? Where are you guys headed in the region when you're out for, an afternoon?
Well, my daughter and I have horses.
Okay.
And we keep our horses out in Boone's Mill. And we love to trail ride. We go all over the state, but primarily we just love to hit the trails. And recently, just because my schedule has been so busy, we just go out to the barn and love on them. Now, my daughter and I, my second daughter, my middle one, we recently went to My Fair Lady over at Bergland.
Nice.
And it was amazing. And we had a date day. And we went to Luigi's for dinner, and it was just a really nice treat because my second daughter is really big into musical theater. My son is loving baseball, and so he's 8, and so I go to all his baseball games. And then recently we went to a Beyblade tournament this past weekend. Didn't even know they had those until he found it. But we just love just to spend time together. But our favorite place by far is home.
Of course it is, because it's the best place.
Yeah, and I'm an avid gardener. I love getting out in my yard and working in the dirt. That's my therapy.
Absolutely. Well, I love it because, you've got horses, you've got trails, you've got outdoors, you've got theater. What more do you need here in Roanoke Valley?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, okay, listeners, please help me in thanking Aimee Dickenson, owner of RevIVe Hydration Roanoke, for her time today and sharing more about her unique healthcare and self-care service. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And don't forget, if you're curious about IV therapy, parties, vitamin injections, and other topics Aimee and I have discussed today, you can learn more about RevIVe Hydration Roanoke at RevIVeHydrationRoanoke.com.